Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and everybody else all across the world, welcome to the first ever 10th episode of the Screen and Pitch Project featuring your hosts M, G, K, and
Tayal.
what's up, guys? We are now at the final stage of our Big Six series, and it's only fitting that in last place comes the least of them all, which is Tottenham Hotspur. Like Giorgio Chiellini said, it's the history of Tottenham. They are the second biggest club, not in London, but in North London. They're the second most famous Tottenham in London because most people go to Tottenham Court Road. Nobody really thinks of Tottenham itself. And as you will see, at least in my list, there's a lot of players on here who happen to play for Tottenham, but really because they played for other clubs. So really, always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
I have the little brother syndrome, and that's kind of what Tottenham has always been. It's like you are part of the big six, so you are part of the elite of the elite, but you are the little brother in that elite of the elite. Like
Yeah,
a comparison from our lives, I think, is when I used to go play basketball against the other IMs. They're the IM Lucknow against IM Ahmedabad, Bangalore, and Calcutta. The way the equivalent example would probably be like a Dartmouth in the Ivy Leagues. You're part of the elite of the elite. If you're from Dartmouth, they say that you're from an Ivy League college. If you play for Tottenham, it's cooler to say that I played for a Big Six club than to say I played for Tottenham. And
yeah,
I mean, the joke's gone and on. I mean, White Hart Lane was 3 Point Lane for Chelsea for the longest time.
yeah,
Um, at the same time, I think Tottenham, especially under Pochettino, was one of the most fun clubs to watch, and they've had some absolutely incredible talents play and go through the club.
yeah,
So we will be giving them their flowers, which they deserve.
yes,
But they have always kind of been that little brother syndrome. I think
yeah.
one of my favorite memories as a Chelsea fan is the 2-2 draw against Tottenham to make sure that they don't win the Premier League. And that match is genuinely one of my most favorite Chelsea fan memories. It's like, fine, we've had a terrible season, but they better not win.
Yeah. I mean, because of that, also, there's very little animosity towards Tottenham. Despite us having a history of bottling things, I always feel confident when we are playing Tottenham. Like, even when we are 2-0 down, it's like, oh, it's Tottenham. Anything can happen, right? And history will show that that has happened. Always entertaining, though. There's never been a boring Tottenham side. They're like, maybe not very good, but always entertaining. And some great players have played for Tottenham. So before we get in, obviously, for our 10th episode, we will absolutely have a sponsor. And Tayal, do you want to tell us who's sponsoring us this time?
Yes. Tired of arguing on the internet, whether it's who's the hottest One Direction member, or who's better between Ronaldo or Messi, or do people of other races deserve to exist? We all have our hills to die on. Introducing Restrain 9000, a new attachment in the shape of a hand to add to your electronic device. Starting with different settings from a gentle slap to a complete chokehold, we at Restrain 9000 know that nothing but physical violence will stop you from continuing that online argument against a 14-year-old troll or Asian click farm or AI bot. Disclaimer: Restraint 9000 does not support physical violence unless when necessary. Terms and conditions apply. Restraint 9000 is not legally liable for any outcomes as it does not currently exist.
All you BDSM fetishists out there, get your hands on Restrain 9000 when it comes out. Cool. So without further ado, let's get into our top 10 favorite Tottenham players.
Oh, yes. And one last piece of credit I want to give Tottenham is thank you for destroying Manchester City randomly every
Yeah,
year. It
yeah,
hasn't helped because they still win the league, but at least you guys managed to
yeah.
do something right.
True to form, the one time when you really needed to, you didn't last season. It's the history of the Tottenham.
Yep.
All right. So, favorite Tottenham players, honorable mentions in 3, 2, 1. There's a lot of players here who just played for other clubs and that's why they're here. Starting off with Clint Dempsey. I've written Fulham. I loved him at Fulham. I thought he was great. A player that I would have liked for Arsenal to sign. Tottenham signed him, was there for like a season, was okay, and then left for the MLS. Greatest American in the PL, like you've written in your section. Great player. Then, like 2009 to 11 or 12 era, Fulham will get a lot of love for me in this video, and he was one of the chief architects of that. Brad Friedel, was just a reliable goalkeeper. He was just super steady, super solid, and he had this like lovable uncle vibe about him, which is why he's on this list. Peter Crouch, I actually associate him more with Liverpool because that's where I was first sort of, I first saw him play. I also associate him with Stoke more. He was just such a nice, lovable dude. Actually, a really good player. Had a great first touch, decent header of the ball. Obviously, given the fact that he was 10 feet tall, just a hard player to dislike. Dele Ali just had all the potential in the world. Obviously, he has like a tragic sort of past, a tragic childhood, and hopefully he recovers to hit the heights that he could have. But most importantly, just stays happy and healthy. But just an awesome player who really broke out during the Pochettino era and was looking like he could be a world beater. I remember, I think Sir Alex Ferguson wanted United to sign him because he thought he was an absolute player. Tom Huddleston, I don't know if you remember this. So he had this thing where he was like, I'm not going to cut my hair till I score a goal. And he was like a midfielder who had a decent long shot on him. So it took him forever to score. So by the time he finally did, he had like a huge afro on him. I thought it was pretty funny. And, always nice to have a player who likes having a pop from like 30 yards out, right? So those are my honorable mentions.
Great list. I have Dempsey as well. Again, best American in the Premier League. Dele Alli will come a little later in my list. The other three, again, very fond players, more like I would say cult players. I'll start off with Dempsey, who, again, best American in the Premier League and clinical striker. And along with Richarlison, probably more known for what they did for other clubs than what they did specifically for Tottenham. But since we're unlikely to cover Fulham and Everton, good place to shout them out. I really loved Dempsey because he was a very clinical striker and very kind of hard nosed player, especially compared to Landon Donovan, who was more like the pretty boy American. I loved like Dempsey's toughness, and of course the "you don't know where I'm from, dog" is iconic, and I love just saying that. And yes, I think for that statement alone, he deserves to be in an honorable mention. Probably would have been higher, honestly, if he played a little bit more for Tottenham.
Yeah.
Vertonghen and Danny Rose for me are like the very solid fulcrums of a team. Both of them did their role really well. Danny Rose was great going forward, kind of more of a modern fullback, kind of the transition between the classic fullbacks only really defend to someone who actually bombs up and down. One of the rare players who actually played well in the worst Champions League final ever, I think, was Liverpool Tottenham. Unwatchable, but Danny Rose did his shift. And then someone who I assume will be higher on your list in Musa Dembele, who is the classic ball carrier, could get out of any tight space. I unfortunately didn't watch him that much, which is why he's not higher on my list. But the accolades that rival clubs give Dembele, from different Chelsea players to different Tottenham players, it's almost like everybody says, "Why were you at Tottenham?" Which is a bit of an indictment, but a fantastic just ball progressor, ball carrier. And it's one of my favorite skills in football is someone who can just be on the ball and be imperious on the ball.
Yeah. I'll talk about Dembele at length later because I used to watch him a lot. Um, Richarlison, I think was a really good player for Everton, hasn't quite clicked for Tottenham. Danny Rose, so his debut was against Arsenal, like he was a youth
The
product.
wonder goal, right?
Yeah, he scored a wonder goal.
Yeah.
So that's like my peak sort of Danny Rose memory. Jan Vertonghen's a great centre back. He just looks exactly like an American high school jock in those high school movies. Like he looks like you slap like one of those sports jackets on him, and he looks like he's bullying the nerd. That's the first thing that springs to my mind whenever I see Jan Vertonghen. I mean, that's not a takeaway from the fact that he was a very, very good centre back. Him all solid honorable mentions. And now I think we can just move into the top 10. So 10th in 3, 2, 1.
So I'm starting off with Jermaine Defoe, absolute clinical finisher, kind of the old school striker, not expected to do anything else, not expected to pass, not expected to contribute in the build up, not expected to track back, just expected to score goals. And especially I think 2000s Premier League, that is what strikers were expected to do, and Defoe was just really really good at it. Scored some great bangers from outside the box as well, but more of a poacher. Great celebrations, great bald head. I like my little bald headed strikers who just know what their job is, and their job was to score goals. Not, I would say, as flexible or as kind of iconic as some of the other Tottenham players, just more of like a pure efficiency, pure out and out striker, and was, I think, one of Tottenham's best players in the 2000s.
I'll speak about Defoe a little later. Now, my number 10 is Dimitar Berbatov, who was my number one in Man United because that's where he really spent the longest of his Premier League stint. But I was introduced to him at Tottenham, and when he was at Tottenham, he was so good. I called him a Bond villain. Incredible, immaculate first touch, incredible vision. I think he really peaked at United, but at Spurs in those 2 seasons when he was there, he formed this great partnership with another player who's on this list a little further down this list. My introduction to one of my favorite players, Dimitar Berbatov, man. What a player to watch. Absolute Rolls Royce.
Yeah, incredible skill. I also associate him more for his time at United, but one of those players who could invent new things on the pitch, which very few people can.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to number 9 in 3, 2, 1. So yeah, my number 9 was Jermaine Defoe. Like you said, right, just a goal scorer, pure and out and out goal scorer. I think he scored 5 goals against Wigan in that 9-1 demolition that they had. He was a consistent goal scorer in the late 2000s, early 20s. Played for Portsmouth as well, I think, for a while. Sunderland, wherever he went, Jermaine Defoe would score goals. Just an all-round proper striker, right?
Yeah, just reliable striker that any team could use. My number 9 is Dele Alli, who was the prodigy. I think it's hard now to remember how hyped he was in 2016-17, where he seemed like the second coming of like a Lampard type, the second striker, that classic, just plays behind the primary striker, not the pure engine of the team, but just kind of that second goal scorer, was putting up numbers from the midfield that honestly were Lampard like for a season or two. But then just the number of games, injuries just completely derailed his career. But at that time, it really looked like he could do anything on the pitch. Never really had the best work rate, but when it came to attacking, when it came to passing, shooting, even getting out of tight spaces, he was kind of that complete attacking midfielder, kind of in the likes of maybe a Lampard, not obviously the passer of a KDB, but kind of playing that kind of attacking midfielder role. For that 1 or 2 seasons, he probably was the most hyped young player in the Premier League.
Yeah, and he deserved the hype.
And
I
he
think his
deserved it.
yeah, his numbers were crazy, right? You could make a case for him being player of the season level numbers, not just young player of the season. Moving into number 8 in 3, 2, 1. Oh, finally.
Finally. Yes. The iconic celebration, Mr. Robbie Keane, one of the rare times where we both completely agree on the position. But a perfect out and out striker. I remember him as much for Ireland as I do for Tottenham because I think he is one of Ireland's best players ever, top goal scorer.
Yeah,
But a great striker, iconic cartwheel to the gun celebration,
yeah,
and one of the first, I think, like absolute trademark celebrations that
yeah,
exist, where you associate the player with the celebration as much as you associate the player with anything he did on the pitch.
yeah.
Not to say that he was bad on the pitch. Great
Oh no.
striker,
Yeah,
very, very good player. Not as fun as Berbatov, in my opinion. Berbatov just did things you never expected, while Keane was more of kind of a classic, more efficient striker, but a fantastic player. Could help in the build up a little bit. Was definitely more of a complete player than I would say Jermaine Defoe was.
yeah,
Um, fantastic attacking presence.
yeah. I think he was the Tottenham player when I started watching. So late 2004, early 2005. I thought of Robbie Keane when I thought of Tottenham.
Yeah.
The celebration was so cool. It's so cool. And I think it stood the test of time. Even now, I would say it's amongst the coolest celebrations that I've seen. The cartwheel into the guns. But he was so much more than the celebration. He was very much in the dribbly, tricky forward mode. And he would score a lot of goals for Tottenham. And yeah, and then the celebration, right? And the fact that he's the only guy to match in our list so far is like a trophy because Tottenham doesn't get many of those.
They need whatever they can get their
They
hands
need
on.
whatever they can get. Cool. Moving on to number 7 in 3, 2, 1. Aaron Lennon. So in the 2000s, inverting wingers wasn't really a thing. We used to have right footer on the right wing, the left footer on the left wing. Aaron Lennon was winger of that time. Fast, dribbly, not a lot of end product, but would consistently beat his man and get to the byline and put a cross in. Aaron Lennon was fun to watch, not very overly threatening, but I just remember Aaron Lennon being super fast, always being able to beat his man, and then the cross or the end product would probably not be there, but he would do the fun parts consistently enough for me to have fond memories of him. was the guy who assisted Bale's crazy volley goal, which is one of the few times I remember Aaron Lennon's end product.
Yeah, I remember him being a very solid winger, would bomb up and down, but not really someone who would have that many goal scoring contributions. While I also have my winger, who also played as a striker sometimes in Lucas Moura, the Flash, one of the fastest players ever in the Premier League. Also led one of the most iconic Tottenham games. I think the best Tottenham game I've ever seen was that Tottenham Ajax comeback, and that third goal was just incredible from Moura, creating out of nothing. All of his goals, he was just absurd pace, great on the ball, had these incredible dynamic runs. His end product was lacking every once in a while, but the runs, the creativity on the ball, it was beautiful to watch. He could create something out of nothing just with his pace and creativity. Usually he was lacking the end product, so he never reached kind of the top level of football. Would have probably been interesting to see him in some other systems. Like I think he's better than Sterling, but he didn't have that full ecosystem around him. But yeah, easily one of my favorite Tottenham players to watch.
Yeah. I think unlike a lot of Tottenham players, really clutch moments player as
Yeah,
well for them. The Ajax comeback is just like
yeah,
iconic, right? Just crazy. Um, and very out of character for Tottenham. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of digs in. I really shouldn't because I actually don't I don't mind Tottenham at all. But
yeah.
still, it's just it's hard not to, right? Because
It's
they're
hard not.
all
They've set themselves up for it. We can't help it.
yeah. Um, all right, so number 6 in 3, 2, 1. Ooh, yeah, I forgot about him. Heung-min Son. He's lower down on this list because I'm not as big a fan of his because I feel like he gets away with not being labeled as a dirty player just because he cries a lot after doing something evil, like breaking somebody's leg. Also got away with a very nasty elbow on Rob Holding in the 21-22 season. It was towards the end of the season. If we beat Tottenham, we could get to top 4, but we didn't. We lost 3-0. Rob Holding was playing, which is the main reason he got sent off in that game. Arguably, Son should have been sent off even before that. So, and then obviously last season, fluffing his lines against Man City, where it was Heung-min Son. I thought he was going to score. It was Heung-min Son. It was Tottenham against City. But, so those are just the reasons why he's a little lower on my favorite players list. The best Tottenham players, he's easily top 5, probably top 3. And the reason I've written XG is because he is one of the few people in the world who consistently scores more goals than his XG. And, it makes sense. He's one of the deadliest finishers that we've seen in this league. Incredible pace to burn the Burnley goal, which won the Puskas Award that season, encapsulates Son in a nutshell, right? You give him an inch, he runs across pretty much the entire pitch, blistering pace, ice cold finishes, just a crazy good player, right? When people talk about the best wingers in Premier League history, he absolutely belongs in those conversations. He's probably one of the best counter-attacking weapons to have in your team, one of the scariest players to face off against when you're in the opposite side, and for good reason.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'll talk about Son later on in my list. But completely echo everything you say. And his XG performance, I think it was usually like Messi and Son, who just every year outperform their XG consistently, are just able to, and Son is just able to create something out of nothing game after game. My number 6 is Eric Lamela, such a mercurial player. You have no idea whether he's going to score a Travella goal or he's going to get a red card. Like absolutely unpredictable, insanely talented player. Tries things on the pitch that nobody else does. Honestly, that Travella goal is one of my favorite League goals.
The one
That
against Arsenal,
Yep, the one against
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Arsenal.
It
To
goes like
do
a
it,
snooker shot.
yes, and to do it against your biggest rival, to have the balls to pull that
Yeah,
off, and then to actually score off it is just insane.
yeah. I wasn't even mad when that happened. I was just like,
Yeah,
holy shit, how awesome was that?
yeah. It's like one of those things where you can't even say anything against it. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite goals as well.
Yeah, and he would pull off these kind of insane shots, some great goals, some great passes. Great player, but injured very often, and of course would come up with some of the worst red cards in the worst moments. So not someone you could ever fully rely on.
Yeah,
But in terms of watchability, way up there. Like
yeah.
those are the players I love to watch, where you have no idea what he's gonna do.
You say Eric Lamela, I think of that Trivela goal,
That Travella
and
goal.
it's absolutely gorgeous. All right,
Yes.
moving on to number 5 in 3, 2, 1.
So I think for me the top five is like a clear segment where I feel like the top five are clearly their best players.
Yeah.
And clearly, at least in the modern era, these five were the ones that really exemplified the greatness of Tottenham. Um, and number one is, or number five is Luka Modric. When that was really his coming out, was his time at Tottenham. That midfield maestro could make every pass in the world. Everything we see at Madrid, he was doing at Tottenham. I think maybe not as much of like the defensive work rate, but creatively and on the ball, he was just incredible. Partnering up with someone else who is also later on the list and may have also made a similar transition. He was one of those kind of offensive engines which just dictate a game. There are very few footballers who you feel like can really control how the entire 22 people on the pitch are playing, and he is one of those players.
Yeah.
I think now, because we associate him with his time at Madrid, it's easy to forget how incredible he was at Tottenham as well.
Yeah. For me, also, the top 5 are basically like arguably Tottenham's 5 best Premier League players. I will talk about Modric a little later. Harry Kane is probably Spurs' greatest Premier League player. He's number 5 on my list because he would always score against Arsenal. Harry Kane, penalty, goal, inevitable. He's the emblem of Tottenham in the last decade. And I don't mean in terms of, not winning trophies and so on. I mean this in terms of Tottenham really bridging the gap from the remaining 14 clubs and becoming a top 6 club in its own right is because they had Harry Kane. Incredibly intelligent footballer. Can play as a 9, can play as a 10, can drop deep and put out those raking passes for Lucas Moura, Dele Alli, and so on. Left foot, right foot, heading, free kicks, penalties, long shots, near post, far post. The only thing that he's missing in his locker is pace. That's it. Otherwise, Harry Kane is as complete as they come, dangerous and frustrating to play against. Just, he's going to score. There's an inevitability about Harry Kane that was almost like at odds with the flakiness that was Tottenham. Harry Kane is an all-timer in the Premier League, all-timer for Tottenham, all-timer for England, and he's only gone to the Bundesliga and proven it because he's Harry Kane.
For sure. Harry Kane is higher on my list as well. Complete emblem, represented the club in a fantastic manner as well.
Yeah. On to number 4 in
Yes.
3, 2, 1. Twice
Yes.
in our list. Christian Eriksen. I think he was the heartbeat of that peak Pochettino Tottenham team. Hardworking, pressing, passing midfielder with an eye for goal. Really just knit together the entire team. And he had this quiet confidence about him that made him extremely likable. The fact that he came back from like a cardiac arrest and was, for a period of time, Man United's best player when they signed him speaks volumes to how good Christian Eriksen is, right? Could have easily played for the top clubs in the Premier League at his peak. Tottenham was a top club in no small part because of a midfield that had Christian Eriksen.
Okay, so completely echo what you're saying. He joined right as Modric was leaving Tottenham. So I
Yeah,
think it's like Modric left in 2012, Eriksen came in 2013, and he filled that role perfectly. Was the attacking midfielder, could get double-digit goals and assists, so reliable, insane work rate, just an incredibly, again, I think all five of Tottenham's best players, and maybe a lot of their players, were just very likable on the field.
yeah,
So Ericsson, Modric, both were just talismans, but also people that other fans would enjoy watching. Ericsson had a great work rate. I would say maybe at their Tottenham times, maybe a better work rate than Modric. Not quite that top end
yeah,
creativity that Modric had, but I just remember him just playing out his midfield role so well with Kane and Son, part of the I think best Tottenham teams, and perhaps maybe could be argued as the one of the most vital components of that team.
Number 3 then in 3, 2, 1.
So here I have Sir Harold Kane. Just his efficiency and his ability to do everything you would want a modern striker to do is unparalleled. Is he the best striker in the world? Maybe. Is he the most complete striker in the world? Definitely. Like I don't think there's even an argument that there's a more complete striker since maybe I would say peak Suarez than Harry Kane in terms of the ability to do link up play, the ability to score, right foot, left foot, headers. He can do his penalties. Like everything you would want in a striker is what Harry Kane does. He also is like a funny interview and seems like genuinely a likable guy who wants to play American football after he retires. So just like that all around personality is great. And there was something intensely likable and rootable about him because both for England and for Tottenham, he just never wins. But you kind of just it's become kind of part of his personality or part of his whole
Yeah,
career is that even when he goes to Bayern, is the one season that Bayern doesn't win, which is kind of insane.
yeah,
Um, but never, I mean, but you would be considered a psychopath if you or extremely, extremely ignorant if you ever thought that Harry Kane is the reason that they don't win.
yeah.
He is the only reason why they are even competitive most of the time. Um, I would say he didn't have like the top tier flair that my top two players had on the pitch.
Hmm.
He was more efficient, so that's why I have two players above him.
Yeah,
But easily to me, I mean, the greatest Tottenham player of the Premier League era.
yeah, for sure. My number three is Luka Modric. He is one of the few midfielders who is complete in my book. Can do everything, can defend, can attack, can press, can shoot, can pass, can dictate the entire field of play. And in my memory, the first really top class player that Spurs had, right? They had like some good players like Keane and Berbatov and Defoe playing for them in like the early to mid 2000s who were really good. And then they signed Luka Modric from Dinamo Zagreb. And like early Modric was a little physically weak, but once he got used to the pace of Premier League, he was running the show for Tottenham. And this was when Tottenham really started actually pushing for the top four. And a big part of that was Luka Modric just pulling the strings. Um, was a bit of an under the radar signing for Real Madrid, where they were in this Galacticos era, where they were signing Ronaldo, Kaká, Benzema, Xabi Alonso, Ozil, Khedira, and then they signed Modric from Tottenham, become probably the best midfield signing they made amongst all of those. Is testament to how good Luka Modric was. Absolutely ran the show at the 2018 World Cup for Croatia. And if you saw him at Tottenham, you kind of knew that this guy was destined for bigger and better things. Again, with no disrespect to Tottenham, Luka Modric was way beyond like a top four finish sort of level for his career and the trajectory he was on, and he went on to prove that, right? So, yeah, that's why he's up here. I'm partial to like really good midfielders, and Luka Modric, to say the least, was a really good midfielder.
Yeah. For both Tottenham, Real Madrid, Croatia could
Yeah,
drag his teams to better performances than the surrounding talent would expect.
yeah,
And that talismanic ability to just dictate a game is something very few players have.
yeah. Cool. Moving on to number two in three, two, one. Okay, three for three, three. So I remember watching left back Gareth Bale. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
I think Harry Redknapp was the manager, and there was this very weird stat where because he kept getting injured and he didn't start enough games, Gareth Bale was on a losing streak for like a year or so, where he hadn't been on the winning side since he was at Southampton, something like that, right? And then he started playing instead of Benoit Esuekoto. There's a throwback name for you
Wow.
guys. No, I googled this because I remember that I wanted to see who the left back was at the time. I remember that he started playing because somebody got injured, and then he was playing well and he was like super fast. And what Redknapp did when the starting left back Asuekoto came back was start playing Bale at left wing, and that's when the transformation started. He used to play on the left wing, then just could absolutely skin his man for pace, and then his coming out party happened against Inter Milan. But if you've been watching the Premier League, you knew this was coming. It wasn't a total surprise, and he absolutely obliterated Inter Milan in Mycon, and the world knew Gareth Bale. Um, the reason I've written Venom is because everything that Gareth Bale did from that point on, once he, finally grew into his physique, was with so much overwhelming force and power that you felt that you were up against something feral, like you very rightly written there. His space, the power with which he was running made you feel like you would melt away in the wake of his speed, like the Copa del Rey goal, right? Just absolute venomous speed. Curl a goal in from like 25 yards, 30 yards out. But the venom with which he would strike that ball would stay hit, right? I remember one goal where I think against Swansea or something, he just cuts in players holding onto his shirt, shrugs him off like he's not there, and absolutely leathers it into the top left corner. When Gareth Bale struck a ball, it stayed struck. When Gareth Bale ran past you, you stood frozen. And that last season where he scored 20 odd goals, he was the best player in the league, I felt. I think it was also the same time that Van Persie was at his absolute pomp. Van Persie had more goals, but Bale was right up there in terms of just absolutely single-handedly obliterating teams. Was a force of nature and went to Madrid and just showed that time and again.
Yeah. I mean, he was a one-man army
Yeah,
at those couple of seasons at Tottenham. There were other players. I think Luka Modric was there. They had talent, but it just felt like nobody and nothing is going to stop Gareth Bale when he wants to get somewhere or he wants to do something. He could transform a game in a second. That sheer just, it seemed like he was playing with middle school kids, like 15-year-olds.
yeah,
Sometimes when you would see him just shrug off defenders and just thunder bash a ball straight into the top corner. There was nothing subtle about what Gareth Bale did. It was in your face dominance. I am going to destroy you. I'm going to destroy the ball. Like, why are you even trying? That sheer physicality, I don't remember seeing in anybody else,
yeah,
especially a winger.
yeah,
You never associate like so much physical dominance from a winger. Like you have like the Tourés or like the more defensive midfielders who can be physically dominant. You even sometimes have strikers who are dominant, and of course you have center backs who are physical presences. But this is like a Virgil van Dijk level physical presence bombing up and down the wing and just absolutely looking like he's playing a different sport at a different pace, at a different level than other people.
yeah, yeah,
A lot of his iconic moments are with Madrid, with the bicycle kick, with the Copa del Rey goal. But even at Tottenham, those couple of seasons, the goals he was scoring are
yeah.
just
Otherworldly.
incredible, otherworldly, and usually out of nowhere,
Yeah,
and usually after like shrugging off three defenders who were trying to pull his shirt but just couldn't. And if you look at what he did with Wales, getting them to the World Cup, and where Wales is now, I think Wales is not even in the top 100 anymore. Like it was again a one-man operation, a one-man army. But when that one man is Gareth Bale, things can still happen.
yeah. I'm obliged to say, oh, Wales was a two-man operation because of Aaron Ramsey. Gareth Bale was one of the most fun players to watch, one of the scariest players to watch. You physically felt scared for his opponents because of
Yeah,
how devastatingly brutal Gareth Bale was. And not in terms of kicking people away, just like I am
yeah.
so strong and I'm so fast that there's nothing you can do.
I think if there's one player that I would not want to be run into at full speed in the history of the Premier League, it would be Gareth Bale.
Yeah,
Just that
yeah,
pace
yeah,
plus
yeah,
physicality, I think, is the number one in the
yeah,
Premier League.
yeah. Probably. Yeah. I can't think of anyone else. Yeah, maybe Rooney because he also might
Oh
just
yeah.
try to hurt you, but no, yeah,
And
fair shot.
the funny thing is, Bale also seemed like a good dude.
Yeah.
Like,
Bale isn't trying to hurt you. You just die
no,
because he's a
yeah,
volcano or a tornado or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah, skinhead Rooney is not somebody I would want to turn
Oh
into.
no, no chance.
Yeah, cool. Number one. I think I know who your number one is.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know who my number one is. So three,
yes.
2, 1.
Okay, so I'll go first before leaving the table for you.
Yes.
So mine is Sonny, Son Heung-min, my favorite Tottenham player. I think exemplifies everything I want in a football player. Yes, he can go a little bit overboard, but that is because he has that Suarez like tendency of wanting to do everything on the pitch to win, whether it's club or country. Just an incredibly complete striker, winger, who also has an incredible work rate, who also is giving every inch he can to help Tottenham win, which is a very un-Tottenham quality, but that's a separate topic. The the Ballon d'Or goal, which just shows his pace, his dribbling, and his finishing. The goal against Manchester United, where he just curls in a corner. His incredible finesse finishes into the top right corner, can do things with both feet. Just such a reliable goal scorer who also has the flair for the dramatic. Um, with him and Kane, Tottenham never felt out of any game.
Yeah.
And honestly, it felt like that was the reason they could beat Manchester City so often, because you just have these two who could just spin a counter attack out of nothing. They just needed the ball like 10% of the time and could create a good chance out of it. And even if it was a bad chance, you have Son, who's the best, one of the best XG over performers ever, who could turn that bad chance into a goal. Um, Incredible finisher for club and country, puts everything on the line for country as well, which I
Yeah.
think adds to it, beating Germany in the World Cup. And I love this kind of like one man elevating the rest of his country up, and that is really what Sun did. And then, of course, great for representation.
Yeah.
Before this, there was Park Ji-sung as a fantastic Korean player, but there is something about a goal scorer, a talisman, like the face of a team, and the current captain in
Yeah.
Sun being an Asian American, being Asian,
Yeah.
and just being absolutely dominant and dominant in more of like a creative front-facing way
Yeah.
versus Park Ji-sung, which was more of like the workman-like and like
Yeah.
hardworking
Yeah.
superstar.
And like indisputably world class. Like Park Ji Sung was a great
Indisputable.
player, but like
Yeah.
Hyung Min Sun is indisputably world class. So yeah, I agree with everything you said. Right, I have my reasons for him not being higher up in my list, and one of the reasons is my number one. Right, Musa Dembele. Now he's Ayal said he hasn't watched him a lot. I was a big fan of the 2008 to 11 or 12 Fulham team, right? Barclays Minera. They won the Europa League. They beat Juventus around this time, and they finished like 7th, 8th, 9th, something like that for like 2-3 seasons. They had some really good players, right? Their defense had Mark Schwarzer, who was long linked to Arsenal for a while, and their two centre backs were, again, one of them was linked to Arsenal, which is Breda Hangeland. We signed his slightly superior version in Burma Mertesacker. And they had Aaron Hughes. In midfield, they had Danny Murphy, the Liverpool guy. And they had, of course, Clint Dempsey. But the jewel, in my opinion, was Musa Dembele. He used to play as a 10 for them. He wasn't playing in the deeper midfield role where he would become, one of the world's best. Was not the greatest in terms of end product. I think it was Dempsey who scored this, but he essentially does like a no-look back heel flick as an assist to Dempsey, and it was just genius. And the guy scores. I think it was Dempsey. Don't hold me to that. And I was just so taken by Musa Dembele, and he felt like an achievable signing for Arsenal. So from Fulham, I wanted us to sign Clint Dempsey, and I wanted us to sign Musa Dembele. And in the season we signed Santi Cazorla 2012-13, he moved to Tottenham, and I was heartbroken. I remember feeling so sad. Not because he went to Tottenham, but because it meant that we wouldn't sign Musa Dembele. And he was a player that I just would have loved us to have. And I just, in hindsight, I look back and I'm like, dude, like if Santi Cazorla and Musa Dembele was our midfield too, nobody would get the ball off us. Because this guy, once he started playing that deeper role for Tottenham, what he could do there was crazy, right? Unpressable. The guy could just beat anyone and everyone in the midfield, drop a shoulder, super strong, great dribbling ability. He could dribble out of a phone booth, back in again, and then out again just for good measure, and you still wouldn't get the ball off him. Incredible strength, could just break out of waves of pressure and drag the entire team upfield just by dribbling past 2 or 3 players. For me, Tottenham's best player during that era. For those 2-3 seasons before his ankle got injured, for me, he was one of the best midfielders in the world. He could have played for anybody at that point of time. They were lucky to have him. And when all the Tottenham players said the best player they played with was Musa Dembele, the Rudiger one that I shared with you recently, I felt so validated. I was like, no, you guys are saying what I knew for like a decade, that this guy is incredible. He's not just my favorite Tottenham player, he's one of my favorite just players, period, right? I wish more people rated him, but also I feel very proud of my scouting prowess that I was like, oh, this guy is someone we should sign from Fulham. What an absolute player. What an absolute baller.
I think he's one of the ultimate ball players. If you rate someone like him, if you can appreciate what he does, because he doesn't have the goals and assists that other midfielders do. But he had that ability, and when you see other football players and his managers like Pochettino talk about him, they're like, "Oh, this is one of the greatest players I've ever seen," which is kind of incredible for someone who has his resume.
Yeah,
Like the mismatch of resume to how other people in the actual sport talk to him is, I think, one of the biggest I've seen for anybody. Where it's just
yeah,
like people who played against him, people who coached him, people who played with him are like, "Oh, this guy was like an all-time great."
yeah,
Like you guys don't understand how great he was,
yeah,
even though if you look at his statistics or where he played, he doesn't. It doesn't match up. But the people who actually saw him play, who played with him, give him that ultimate respect of like a really really all time great player.
Because I'm a Musa Dembele fan, I read an interview where he was basically, he used to play on the streets, like he used to play on the cement, like street football and stuff, and they used to play those tiny goals. So the thing was really you had to dribble into the goal. There wasn't really a lot of shooting to do. So he didn't like shooting. He actively says this in the interview that I grew up playing like that, so I never really focused too much on shooting. And he does, like, if you look at his shots, they're not the greatest. They like always look a little scuffed. But otherwise you could see where the dribbling came from, right? Like true street baller.
Yeah.
Very fascinating sort of thing, because you listen to a lot of these, like how they grew up playing football sort of translates to how they play football now. um, so Gabriel Martinelli grew up playing futsal, not football.
Oh,
So now he doesn't do it as much. I think that's been coached out of him. But like if you go back 2 seasons ago, he used to do this. He does this shuffle kind of thing with both of his
yeah.
feet, where like it goes left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, and that's how they try to beat players in futsal, because they're used to playing in tight spaces. And in his work camp, in his autobiography, he practiced his first touch by just kicking the ball against a wall. And he was like, I'd keep looking at, okay, how, depending on how I kick the ball, how the ball would ricochet, depending on which part of the foot I use, how it would ricochet, how I then have to control it just because it was coming in a different angle, different speed. And that's how I developed my first touch. So, it's really cool sort of links to how they sort of, you know, practiced stuff in their childhood, like really shining in their attributes when then they're professionals.
Yeah, no, that is very interesting. I think, especially Dembele, kind of to me, his dribbling was like Hazard in a lot of ways, where
Yeah.
it's just it wasn't a lot of flair. It
Yeah.
was just ways to get out of tight spaces and insane body positioning.
Yeah.
Like knew exactly how to position his bodies, had like a sixth sense of where defenders are around him. Like would never get caught unaware.
Yeah.
Just somehow could map out like, okay, I know the defender's right here, right here, right here. This is how I need to position my body. This is how I can spin out of it. And I'm sure that a lot of that is from childhood, just playing so much and just playing probably on the street where people are attacking you from all different angles, and just then being able to like mind map where people are around you and escape those tight spaces.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, the comparison to Hazard is actually quite apt. Cool guys. So we use Tottenham as a gateway to a lot of interesting football conversations which we haven't done with other clubs. So thank you, Tottenham.
Yeah.
Um, that's our list, guys. Who are your favorite Tottenham players? Let us know in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. But that's the 10th episode of the Screen and Pitch project. Signing off, and have a great day.